Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Meezan lecture series. As you all know, this lecture series is based on Ustaz Javed Ghamidi's book Meezan, which is his understanding of the contents of religion. Currently, we are studying his chapter on faith and beliefs, and within faith and beliefs, the faith or belief section that we are studying relates to the hereafter. And in our previous sessions, we have discussed the testimonies regarding the hereafter, that how do we know that the hereafter is going to come? In other words, the proofs of the coming of the day of judgment have been discussed in detail in our previous sections. Today we will be studying another very important aspect, and that is that what are the signs of the arrival of day of judgment? How do we know, or why do we know, or when do we know, or when we'll be able to know when it is going to come? Is there something which is mentioned in the Quran or authentic narratives of the Prophet, or is it mere conjecture? So the Quran has made it clear that no one except God has knowledge of this. Only He knows when it will come, and He has not disclosed this matter even to any of His prophets and angels. But the signs and portents which will signal its advent are mentioned in the Quran and the Hadith, and also in some previous divine scriptures. Now, some of these signs are very general, and others are in the form of specific incidents and happenings. The signs of the first category, which are those general signs, they are not mentioned in the Quran. So the Quran does not mention any general signs. Only Hadith literature mentions them. And of the second category, or the signs of the second category, only one is mentioned. So only amongst the specific incidents that are often reported, only one is mentioned by the Quran, and that is the onslaught of Gog and Magog. So this only can be regarded as a certain sign, because this is the only sign which the Quran mentions. Other signs which are generally known in the regard to the hereafter are found in narratives which the scholars of Hadith technically regard as Sahih. Some of these signs have already manifested themselves, and others, if their ascription towards the Prophet is correct, shall definitely manifest themselves in future. So the signs of the first category relate to the moral degradation that will appear in the whole world before the day of judgment. So remember, the first category is the category in which some general signs are mentioned, and this is the category in which only Hadith literature is vocal. So in general, we know that near the day of judgment, knowledge will be lifted, ignorance will increase, fornication, drinking, murder, plunders would become rampant, so much so that innocent people will be killed. The women will outnumber men to the extent that the affairs of 50 women, it is said, will be entrusted to one man. This does not mean that he would be having 50 wives. Of course, it only means that the affairs of 50 women of different relations would be entrusted to one man. And it is also said that only evil people will exist in this world, and it will become devoid of people who take God's name. Now, of the signs of the second category, the most important is the onslaught of Gog and Magog. We said that in the signs of second category, distinct and definite incidents are mentioned. So remember, the first category is one in which just general signs are mentioned, like knowledge being lifted and fornication and plunder and loot becoming rampant. The second category relates to specific signs. Of these, the one that we've just discussed is the onslaught of Gog and Magog. And the Quran says, this is in Surah Anbiya, and if you look at the words of the Quran, it says, until the time arrives that Gog and Magog are let loose, and they launch an onslaught from every hill, and the certain promise of the day of judgment nears its fulfillment. Then behold, that the disbelievers shall stare in amazement. At that time they will say, woe be to us, we remained indifferent to it. In fact, we have wronged our souls. So this is clearly mentioned, and some more details will, of course, should be known about them. So Gog and Magog, we know they are descendants of Noah's son Japheth. So Noah has had three sons, Sam, Ham, and Japheth. So Gog and Magog are the progeny or the children of Japheth, who was Noah's son. And Japheth actually is the son of Noah, who inhabited the northern areas of Asia. If you look at the map, so the northern areas of Asia were the ones where the children of Japheth actually populated themselves. And we also know that later some of their tribes reached Europe, and after that settled in America and in Australia. And if you look at the book of Ezekiel, they are called the leaders of Russia, Moscow, and Tobolsk. So in this regard, you will see that the way Ezekiel mentions this is something that will give you more awareness about it. It says, "The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against God of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Rosh, Mesech, and Tubal. Prophesy against him. Son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, This is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you, O Gog, chief prince of Rosh, Michel, and Tubal. I will turn you around and drag you around. I will bring you from the far north." So clearly you can see that this is a very important passage. It is also evident from the book of Revelations of John the Divine, which is the last book of the current anthology of the Bible, that the onslaught of Gog and Magog will begin sometime after 1,000 years have passed on the arrival of Prophet Muhammad. So as 1,000 years would have passed after Prophet Muhammad would have arrived, it is said in this book of Revelations that Gog and Magog, their onslaught will begin. At that time, they would be surrounding the earth from all sides. When the disorder they would spread reaches its culmination, the fire will descend from the heavens, and the tremors of the day of judgment will begin. So, if you look at this quotation from the book of Revelations, as I just said, verses 7 to 9, and this is the last book of the current anthology of the Bible. It is supposed to be authored by John the Divine, and John, of course, is one of the disciples of Jesus. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. In number, they are like the sand on the seashore. They march across the breadth of the earth and surround, of course, referring to Mecca. But fire came down from heavens and devoured them. So this is a clear indication of the arrival or the onslaught of Gog and Magog. Proximity of the day of judgment, which the prophet mentioned in a question to instruct the people. So we know the prophet, when he asked Gabriel, the signs he said were, أن تلد الأمة ربتها وأن ترى الحفاة العراة العالى رعاء الشاء يتطاولون في البنيان. One sign is that a slave lady will give birth to her mistress, and the second is that you will see these indigent Arab shepherds walking about barefooted, bareheaded, trying to compete with one another in making tall buildings. So, the second of these signs is very obvious. Not every person of see how it has manifested itself in Arabia over the last 100 years. People have generally found it difficult, according to stars, to determine what is implied by the first of these signs. So remember, we are discussing the proximity of the arrival of the Day of Judgment. And these are the signs about which Hadith literature has also mentioned two very important ones. So one of them is that the slave lady will give birth to her mistress. And according to Ustaz Ghamidi, that this actually means that slavery will be abolished. Its implication is that slavery as an institution shall stand totally eradicated. And both these events have taken simultaneously. We know that they've taken place in the last century. And we would thus, these predictions absolutely determine the period of the proximity of the Day of Judgment. So remember, we have to differentiate between the signs which signal the proximity, and these are the two signs which signal the proximity, and that proximity, of course, can be thought to now be very, we are in that very era. However, the exact nature of the time period which God has in mind is something that we cannot know, but we can now at least gauge this fact that we are in a close connection with that Day of Judgment. However, the time period exactly something we might not know, because these two signs have already manifested themselves. Now, once these signs are going to manifest, then Of course, we are talking about the exact signs of the Day of Judgment. So one is the signs of nearness of the Day of Judgment, which are these two, and the rest that we have discussed, they are the signs that are exactly near the time of the Day of Judgment, or right before the time of the Day of Judgment. The signs which will manifest after these two have been mentioned by the Prophet at one instance, and these include, of course, the onslaught of Gog and Magog. And he is reported to have said, I'm just going to read out this narrative because it actually tells us the those 10 signs. It says, إن الساعة لا تكون حتى تكون 10 آيات خسف بالمشرق وخسف بالمغرب وخسف في جزيرة العرب والدخان والدجال ودابة الأرض ويأجوج ومأجوج وطلوع الشمس من مغربها ونار تخرج من قرة عدن ترحل الناس وريح تلقي الناس في البحر. Which means that these are the 10 signs, and I'm just going to enumerate them. The first of them is the sinking of the earth in the east, then the sinking of the earth in the west, then the sinking of the earth in the Arabian Peninsula. Obviously, this sinking, the way it has been mentioned in the Quran, the Arabic word is khasf, and in all probability it relates to earthquakes. The fourth thing is a dukhan, which is smoke, and Stars is of the opinion that this could actually refer to a great atomic explosion also. The fifth one is Dajjal, and this is an adjective meaning a great deceiver. And Ustaz has explained this, that in narratives, if you look at all the narratives, he is basically mentioned as Al-Masihud Dajjal. It's a false Masih, or a false Christ, or an antichrist, in other words. And in other words, as Ustaz has said, that the implication of this sign, Al-Masihud Dajjal, is that just before the arrival of the Day of Judgment, a person who will impersonate as Jesus will arrive. And because of the fact that the Jews are waiting for a Messiah, Muslims, of course, are also waiting for a Messiah, or Jesus to return, in fact, and Christians are also waiting for the Jesus to return. So, taking advantage of this tradition in both these three branches of Abrahamic religions, he will pose to be that he is the one that they were waiting for. And obviously, he would be a deceiver in this regard. He would be falsely relating himself to Jesus, taking advantage of this tradition of the arrival of Jesus in all these three traditions of the Abrahamic religions. So this is the fifth one. The sixth one is a land animal which probably will be born directly from the earth, the way all creatures were created directly in the beginning. So we know that in the beginning, when mankind was being born, people were being created directly from the core of the earth, or the crust of the earth. And of course, this is something that will also happen, that a land animal will suddenly come from the earth, fully grown. The seventh is the onslaught of Gog and Magog. This has already begun and is gradually going towards its culmination. So remember, Gog and Magog, their rise had started 1,000 years after the arrival of the Prophet. And now it's almost 1,500 years. So we have gone into 5 more hundred years. So the eighth thing which is mentioned is the rising of the sun in the west. The ninth is a fire that will rise from a pit of the Yemenite city of Eden and drive the people from behind. And the last and 10th sign is that a wind that will blow away people into the sea. So these 10 signs are mentioned in Hadith literature. Now, besides these, the advent of Mahdi and that of Jesus from the heavens are also regarded as signs for the Day of Judgment. We know this is also something that is popularly known. The reason that they have been not mentioned by Ustaz, as he has explained in his book as well, the way the other signs have been mentioned, is that the narratives of the advent of Mahdi do not conform to the standards of Hadith criticism set forth by the Muhaddisun. Some of them are weak and some fabricated. And no doubt, some narratives which are acceptable with regard to their chain of narration inform us of the coming of a generous caliph. Remember, something that had to occur after the times of Prophet Muhammad, or near about when he had departed from this earth. So if they are deeply thought upon, reflected upon, Ustaz Ghamidi says that it becomes evident that they actually refer to Amir Muawiyah, who was the last caliph of the Muslims of the early history of Islam. This prediction of the Prophet has thus materialized in his personality, or already we can say already materialized in his personality word for word. And one does not need for any other Mahdi now. So as far as Mahdi is concerned, the only narrative that can be regarded as reliable is this just one narrative, which speaks of the arrival of a righteous caliph. Caliphs of the Muslims of the first period of history is the one who is implied here. And other than that, most of the narratives that speak of the arrival of a Mahdi or a person who is called Mahdi test of historical and hadith criticism. Yes, the Shiite brothers, they do have this narrative in their own tradition, very strongly rooted. And according to them, he is the final Imam or the 12th Imam of them. He will arrive near the day of judgment. He will proclaim his own caliphate, and he will bring along with him the Quran that he had, that has been passed down to the descendants of Ali, anhu, all the Imams, and until this 12th Imam who had gone into occultation or a greater occultation, he arrives, it will remain with him, and that is what they say. But an examination of these narratives tell us that critically they cannot be incoming of Jesus or the reappearance of Jesus as is sought about to occur near the end of times. And Ustad Ghamidi has of course posited something which is already known, that they have generally been accepted, but according to him, if they are analyzed in the light of the Quran, they too become dubious. And he has then put forth his analysis regarding the arrival of the personality of Jesus. So he says the first criticism that he puts forth is that the personality of Jesus has been discussed in the Quran from so many different aspects. The Quran has commented on his dawah mission and his personality in so many surahs. The cataclysm that will take place on the day of judgment is also a very frequently discussed topic of the Quran. The advent of a celebrated prophet of God from the heavens is no small an incident, in spite of the fact that there were many instances in which this incident could have been mentioned. We find that there is not a single place in the Quran, not a single place in the Quran in which it is mentioned that he is said to return. So he raises this question with this radio silence of the Quran. Absolutely nothing about the arrival of Jesus. If it was such an important creed, it was such an important event, then at least the Quran should have indicated about his second arrival. And it has become a fundamental belief of the Muslims is between God and Jesus, which will take place on the day of judgment. On the day of judgment. Now, during the course of this conversation, the Almighty will ask him about the real sphere in which the Christians had gone astray, which is, of course, the divinity of Jesus and Mary. They regarded them to be divine. So, in this conversation, in Surah Ma'idah, God will ask Jesus if it was as per his own instructions that he had told people to deify himself and his mother whilst leaving aside God. In response to this question, among other things, Jesus will say that he instructed his people in the very manner he was asked by God, and that as long as he remained among them, he watched over them what they were doing, and that after his own demise, he was not aware of what good or evil they did. This is something that he would never know because, of course, he had passed away. And that is why he meaningfully says that after his death, it was God, not me, not I, he said, who watched over them. So in this dialogue, one can clearly feel that the last sentence is very inappropriate. If Jesus had come a second time, he would not have said that, God, you only know what they did because I just went away. You were a watcher over them. In such a case, had Jesus had also arrived a second time, he should have responded by saying that he knew what happened with them because, of course, he's going to come a second time. And that a little earlier, when he had come for the first time, he had gone to warn them of their previous faults. When he had come the second time. So when this conversation was taking place on the day of judgment, or when it was going to take place, it would be very inappropriate for Jesus to say that I don't know what went on, because if he had gone the second time, he would have known what had gone on. He would not have said, God, that only you know. And this is something that is a very pinching question. And so I'm just going to read this part of the Quran, which is, as I said, Surah Ma'idah, verse 117. ما قلت لهم إلا ما أمرتني به أن يعبدوا الله ربي وربكم وكنت عليهم شهيدا ما دمت فيهم فلما توفيتني فلما توفيتني كنت أنت الرقيب عليهم وأنت على كل شيء شهيد. Never did I say to them except what you commanded me to do. Worship God, my Lord and your Lord. And I was a witness over them while I dwelt with them. When you gave death to me, you were the watcher over them, and you are a witness over all things. So clearly, this part of Surah Ma'idah near the end does not actually at all suggest, in fact, it goes against the concept that Jesus did return a second time. The third point which Ustaz Ghamidi has raised in this regard is that there is a verse in the Quran, to be precise, this is verse 55 of Surah Al Imran, in which the Almighty has disclosed what will happen to Jesus and his followers until the day of judgment actually arrives. Now, obviously, sense and reason demand that he should have also disclosed his second coming before the advent of this day. I mean, because you see, the Quran has said that right from the departure of Jesus from this world when he was taken away, he was given death the first time, it says that what's going to happen until the day of judgment, it has actually outlined that, and I'm just going to cite that verse. But we don't find that he is mentioned that he's going to come again. Now, if he had to come again, why was this silence maintained at this instance? And that is also something that one simply cannot digest. And in particular, if you look at the words of this verse, it says, "Inni mutawaffika wa rafi'uka ilayya wa mutahhiruka min allazina kafaru wa ja'ilu allazina tabauka fawqa allazina kafaru ila yawmil qiyamah thumma ilayya marji'ukum fa ahkumu bainakum fima kuntum fihi takhtalifun." O Jesus, I have decided to give death to you and raise you to myself and cleanse you from these people who have denied you. I shall make those who follow you superior to those who reject faith till the day of judgment. Then to me you shall all return. So at that time, I shall give my verdict. I shall give my verdict in what you have been differing in. Again, you can clearly see that this shows that Jesus would be given death. His body would be lifted by the Almighty so that it is not mutilated by his enemies. And it says that until the day of judgment, his followers will always prevail on those who have rejected him. So you see, this is a program that has been it's like a broadcast from God. If Jesus had to arrive a second time, why was he not mentioned here? We also know that although it is not mentioned in his Meezan lecture series, or in his book, but during he has come to this conclusion, and he's shown how all these narratives regarding the advent of Jesus were actually expressed in a dream of the Prophet, and the various events of that dream are the ones that these narratives mention, and all the fact that the pig would be killed or the cross will be broken. So all these are indications of the fact that Christianity will be restored to its original teachings. And he says that this is somewhat of a prediction that is mentioned on all these narratives, and this is something that will happen before the day of judgment. So in other words, Christianity would be put into its right shape, in its pristine form, and there will be a revision in Christianity and all the things that have. So this is something that will be restored in Christianity, and as such he says that this is basically a vision shown to the Prophet, and it's not something in any way that relates to something that also is available. It's also something that's absolutely clear from the fact that the words that the Quran has used are Inni mutawaffika wa rafiuka ilayya. So mutawaffika, so if you pick up a with a grammatical object that signifies a human being, then it can only mean to give someone death. There are people who argue that, or we can in fact say that a very large majority of people argue that the word tawaffa used in this verse actually does not mean to give death. It actually means to take in full or to acquire something in full. And they say that it is something that God took him and rafiuka ilayya, and then he lifted it to himself, and that is how he's going to return, because he was lifted alive. But Star says, and clearly the lexicons and Arabic dictionaries support his view, that the word tawaffa cannot be denoted to mean to take something in full when the grammatical object of tawaffa is a human being. So mutawaffika, the ka, which is the grammatical object, is a living being. So in such a case, all dictionaries say that whenever tawaffa is used with a grammatical object, which is a human being, then nothing except death is implied. So it was physical death that was given to Jesus, and his body was actually taken away or lifted, so that the Jews who were after him, after his life, it was liable that they might even mutilate or disfigure his body, and they were not given this chance. So Rafiuka does not mean that he was lifted alive. It actually means that his body was not kept in the excess of his enemies. So with this we come to an end to these signs. So once again, there are the signs that are mentioned in the Quran which relate to the proximity of Day of Judgment, and there are other signs that are mentioned as some signs that will come right near the Day of Judgment. They have to be differentiated. And as Ustaz has said, the only certain sign is the sign of the onslaught of Gog and Magog, Yajuj and Majuj, that they will try to, in fact, this has already occurred. They will conquer the outer part of the countries of the world map. If you look at the world map, and near the end of time, or near the end of this whole scenario, if you look at the Bible, the book of Revelations, and whatever it has said up till now has also proven true. But if you look at this part of that book of Revelations, it clearly tells us that when these descendants of Gog and Magog, they will launch an onslaught, they will not be able to actually enter Mecca and Medina, the city of the Prophet. It's called Hijaz, the area of Hijaz, and when they will try to do so, a fire will come and engulf them, and it will be at that time that tremors of the Day of Judgment will be felt, and that would be, of course, then the arrival of the Qiyamah. And as far as other signs are concerned, we have also discussed them, that some of these signs they are the proximity signs that have already appeared, which means that the abolishment of slavery and the construction of large skyscrapers, tall skyscrapers by the Arabs, that has already taken place. So we have passed the period of proximity, and now we are entering into the period of the closeness of or the right before the time which is to take place, or the events that have to take place before that day arrives. So with this we come to an end to today's session. Inshallah, in our next session we'll be looking at some of the events that are going to take place on the Day of Judgment, and some of the places and the abodes that have been described, like Barzakh or heaven or hell, and how they have been explained and elucidated by the Quran, which will then, of course, bring us to an end to this chapter on belief in hereafter, and we'll proceed to the other tenets of belief. So if you now have any questions regarding today's session, you may raise them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We'll be only taking topic-related questions for now. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand through the React button, or you can place your question in the chat. And if you'd like to remain anonymous, you can send it directly to me in the chat. As we await the questions, I think I'll start the first one. So, Dr. Saleem, the Gog and Magog event, is it supposed to be a one-time event, or like a continuous event? So, like, it keeps on, there are different, like, was Genghis Khan, for example, part of this event, or did he come, like, a bit too soon?
So, if you look at the historical details, and if you look at the book of Revelations, it tells, or the book of Ezekiel, and of course the book of Revelations, it tells us that after 1,000 years have passed from the prophet's demise or arrival in this world, of course, there would be a rise of these of the sons of the descendants of Japheth, who are Gog and Magog. And the Ottoman Turks, they are from exactly their descendants. Similarly, the population that currently is found in Australia and the outskirts of Russia, in the United States, they are all the descendants of Gog and Magog. So that is something that has occurred after 1,000 years had passed on the Prophet. But it says that it has to reach its pinnacle. So it's like saying that they are on the rise. And at another instance in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, in fact, they are called as the yellow races. The in fact, which are these Mongols basically, and the Chinese, to be more precise. So it is like being predicted that the Chinese or the Mongols, they would be on the rise, and near the day of judgment, they would reach such a, I mean, pinnacle. They would reach such a height in their own advancement that they would be actually attacking all the rest of the world. So this is a glimpse that we get, and historical incidents that like Genghis Khan and or Halaku Khan or the other likes, they have to be interpreted in the light of this detailed narrative of the Quran and divine scriptures.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Nushat Shafqat, please go ahead.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sab. Dr. Sab, in the Hadith Jibreel, the Prophet gives a lot of details about what is Islam, what is Iman, what is Ahsan. And when he is asked about the signs of the Day of Judgment, first he
Mhm.
replies that the questionnaire knows as much as I
Knows,
know, and
I
then
know.
goes on to define only two things. One is the end of
Mm,
slavery and
mm,
the rise of these high-rise buildings by these
mm.
Arabs. So,
Right.
wouldn't those be the more authentic events that occurred before the hereafter?
So Al-Ghamidi has categorized, can be something that is a word that might not be very precise in this regard.
Sorry,
So what
Dr.
he has said
Saleem.
is,
Sorry to interrupt you. You got cut off as soon as you said Dr. Ghamidi has categorized. So the word that you mentioned got cut off. If you could please repeat.
okay, so I was just telling Nashad Saab that basically the categorization of Ghamidi Saab is that he has said that the only certain sign is the one that the Quran mentions, and that is the uh, Quran. Other signs have been mentioned in Hadith. And Hadith literature mentions two types of signs. One, which are specific, like, for example, as some people say, the arrival of Jesus or the arrival of Mehdi, which we've just seen how he has criticized. And then, of course, the fact that these Arabs would build high rises. There will be some general signs like knowledge would be lifted and ignorance would be rampant and people would lose faith, etc. So these have been taken place, which they already have. So those 10 signs also are specific that are mentioned in the Hadith literature, like the earthquakes in the east and the west. Signs are the ones that will take place after the proximity signs. So remember that all of them, except the arrival of Gog and Magog or the rise of Gog and Magog, have been mentioned in Hadith literature. So he's cautious in this regard. He says that if those ascriptions to his kind self is true, then of course they will take place. So to him, it's not a question of authenticity or not non-authenticity. It's like certitude and non-certitude. So for him, the certitude or the certain sign is just one, and the rest conjectural totally. It only means if their ascription to the Prophet is true, then they will.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Any more questions, topic related? Okay, it seems that we might not have any more topic related questions. Shall we move
Mhm.
to non topic related questions? Or shall we stop early today? Because we're having a lot of disjointed audio.
Oh, we'll check Saleem pe.
I think it's just bad internet in general in Pakistan. I'm sorry, Dr. Saleem, I couldn't hear you. Are we proceeding or shall we stop a bit early today?
We can proceed. I mean, if there are questions off topic,
Hey,
because
off-topic questions?
because the fact is that the signals are they are perfectly okay.
Oh. Okay, Bisma, please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saleem. Assalamualaikum, everyone. Sorry, I missed the beginning part of the lecture today.
Assalam.
My question is: the last three Meezan lectures have been on the signs of the hereafter. Is that correct?
On the
On the
testimonies,
on the signs
on
of
the
the
not
coming
on
of
the
the
sign.
hereafter.
No. They
Right?
relate to the testimonies of the arrival of the hereafter.
Okay.
Signs, the one that relate to signs have just been discussed today.
Okay. So have all three lectures, including the one today, they'll all be posted because I couldn't find the lecture that was. I'll reach out to Ghazal directly, probably, which was I think the first lecture in the series. That hasn't been posted, so I was just wondering.
I don't know about that. That I would not be knowing. You need to check with the team.
Right, I'll do that. And Dr. Saleem, when do you intend to do a lecture on the signs? Because testimony, I see, because I know once I'd seen a lecture.
I just did today. The entire lecture today
On signs? Okay, I'm going to read it.
on
Okay,
signs.
I'll watch it. Thank you, Dr. Saleem. I'm sorry, that was my only question. I apologize.
Bisma, the previous two Belief in the Hereafter lectures are both posted on YouTube. So if you go to the English channel, you'll be able to see it under Belief in the Hereafter Part 1, Part 2, and then this one's going to be Part 3, inshallah.
That is on the Ghamidi YouTube or just regular YouTube?
It's Dr. Saleem's English YouTube.
Okay, I'm going to look for it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mariam.
No problem. Right. Any more off-topic questions? Akram Batisa, please go ahead.
Sir. So when I'm on the signs, you just explained to that Christian, people who believe in Jesus will be dominant. They're not talking about the Christians of the day, are they? Because they don't believe in Jesus as we do. They believe in him being the Son of God, but he was not Son of the God. So when you mentioned that the Christian will be dominant, are you talking about these people or they're still to come?
I'm sorry, I couldn't get your question.
You said people who believe in Jesus, Allah says
people who believe in Jesus. Yeah, they're going to prevail.
They will not prevail. So are you talking about a Christian of the day?
Yes, of course. Because they believe in Jesus.
They don't believe in him as
they believe in Jesus as a prophet. I mean, that is something that is explicitly mentioned. We are talking about the fact that the followers of Jesus, not the believers of Jesus. So they believe in Jesus, whatever the status that they give him. That's regardless of, that is a misconception, of course, that arose later on. But what is meant by the Quran is that those who follow Jesus, so whether as a prophet or whatever shape they have given him, whatever status that they have given him, that's regardless.
Okay, so that is a sign, prevailing sign today. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Naushad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Dr. Again, the Quran mentions at several places that the day of reckoning is just round the corner, is very close to you and all. And yet, Alhamdulillah, 1400 plus years have passed. So when we say that we are at the threshold of the day of judgment, what could one estimate? Because it's quite scary to think of it that way. What could be the further period that we have on this earth as humans? 300 years, 500 years?
I do understand. You see, there are two aspects to this. If you tabulate and collate all verses that mention this incident, you'll see that there are two things which are mentioned. And because of confusing the one with the other, this conclusion has arisen, and that is that the day of judgment of the nations of the world who were the addressees of the prophets of God. So that is also mentioned in the same way as the day of judgment is mentioned. So basically, they are mentioned as the days of judgment that these nations like the Ad and the Samud and the people of Lot, they faced in their own times. And they are being told that it's right around the corner. If you deny it, then you are just going to be punished. So that punishment is not the punishment of the day of judgment. It's the punishment that is going to, they're going to encounter it because of denying a messenger of God. And there are some other also verses that make you feel that as if regarding the post-prophetic era also, it seems that it's just around the corner. So about that, the Quran is also clarified that, remember, the days of God are different than your days. So when he says it's around the corner, it's not God. It's not our count that he's referring to. It is the count of God himself, for whom 1,000 years is like one day.
So the miniature days of judgment of the followers of these
Right.
messengers, that
Correct.
you are saying is different from the final day of judgment.
From the final, because you see, these are the 2 days of reckoning. Both are called days of reckoning. Both are called Asa in the Quran. Both are called the hour, as if the final hour. So regarding the miniature days of judgment, because they have also taken place in the times of God's messengers, so the way they are spoken of is very similar to the sound that the day of judgment is coming. Because for them, this was actually the day of judgment. But this does not mean that there is not going to be another day of judgment for them as well. But the style of the Quran, if you look at it, is the same, as it mentions that these miniature days as if they were their own final days.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Bisma, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, Dr. Saleem, can I ask an off-topic question, Mariam? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I wanted to ask you, Dr. Saleem, there are lots of times in the middle of the night I'll wake up round about, before Fajr, like 4:30, 4 in the morning, 3:30, and I'm still aware that I'm awake, but I'm not fully. It's like I don't want to get up completely and do wuzu, and that's maybe the shaitan that's done the qalba over me. But I sometimes just say tahajjud. I'm make a very conscious effort to wake up in the moment and be aware that I'm saying my tahajjud, and I say it properly. As in, I make sure that I do the proper. If I make I'm aware that I'm saying my tahajjud. I'm just in bed. My question to you is, how wrong is that? I don't really
you
get up.
feel that you have offered your tahajjud while you're still in bed.
Yes, Dr. Saleem, I don't, in that moment, it's the shaitan ka ghalba. I don't feel like getting up and doing the wuzu. I do not. And it's sometimes because then I feel I'll wake up, I have to work in the morning, my sleep will be a little distorted. So sometimes I just wanted to find out how wrong I was and if I should stop doing that.
You see, it's just a question that it would not be counted as tahajjud. It's all that
Okay.
it will be counted as that you got up and you remembered God, you did
Right.
some zikr or did that. So remember, tahajjud is a ritual that you have to get up from the bed, do wuzu,
Okay.
and offer the prayer.
Okay.
So all that you would be given it's still a rewarding thing that you get up in the middle of the night and you don't immediately go to sleep, but you think of God or maybe say some words of prayer. So
Right.
obviously this is a very rewarding, rich, I would say, utterance from you, but it cannot be classified as a tahajjud
Okay.
prayer. That
I
is
was
a
hoping
formal
that,
thing.
right. I was hoping it could be the next step would be that I could get up, but
Yes,
anyways.
if you can get up, then that would be the thing that was going to lead you to the tahajjud prayer.
Right. And then the tahajjud prayer, that can be any time after Isha. So it doesn't really matter then at that point in time. But do I
No,
have to break
it
my
cannot
sleep?
be any time. It has to be between Isha and Fajr, or Isha and the start of Fajr. When the
But one
Isha
has to
time
break
ends.
their sleep.
So yes, ideally, breaking the sleep and then getting up is the right way. But if you're already awake, and the tahajjud time has started, then you can offer it before going to sleep.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem.
Uh,
Thank you very much. Akram sir, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mariam. Sir, Dawatul Ard. How I always wonder how would people recognize Dawatul Ard, because I have not seen a lot of creatures that Allah has given.
no, it will be. No one has ever seen someone being directly created from earth. This is a happening that occurred at the beginning of time. When mankind was being created, remember we've discussed this in some other sessions. In Surah Sajda, it has been explained in detail. Bada khalqal insani min teen, that the creation of mankind started by them being created directly from earth. Then it says, "Bada khalaq al-insana min teen, summa ja'ala naslahu min sulalatin min teen." And then later on, they were given the capability of reproducing themselves. So initially, mankind came out of the crust of the earth, and the earth itself acted like the womb of a mother, and they would be directly created, and they would be in a position at that time to lead a life, and that was what we call as the initial humanoids. And evolution actually took place. Remember, this is an evolution within the human species. So they were humanoids, but then later on, they were given the ability to procreate and reproduce. And then Quran says the third stage came when they were perfected and given common sense and intellect, and they were properly, constituted as human beings. And then, of course, there's a word that the Quran uses, "Summa sawwah fanafakhtu fihi min ruhi." Then they were, God says that He breathed His Spirit into them, and from those creatures He selected one who are called Adam and Eve, and then the rest of mankind actually arose from Adam and Eve. So initially, until Adam and Eve were there, we find a whole series of events that took place within the human species, like humanoids who were directly being born, then they could create themselves, and then they were given perfection and intellect and the Spirit of God, as nafakhtu fihi ruhi. He breathed His Spirit in them, which is the soul that was given to them. And from amongst these people, Adam and Eve were the first who were given this status as the progenitors of mankind.
Sir, I believe all that. Maybe I didn't explain my question. I didn't, put my question properly. I'm Da'watul Allah is talking about this as
So that's what I'm saying.
final
What I'm
sign.
saying is, Dabatul Earth is a sign in which an animal will be created directly from earth. It will not be as if some other animal has given it birth.
Yes. How
So
would we
just as
recognize? How would we
how
recognize
you
that this
recognize it,
animal is that
that
one?
it would be so obvious. Of course, the Hadith literature does not say about anything about it, but it seems that it will be so obvious that there would be no doubt about it, that it has come out of the earth. There would be people who would witness it, and there would be a large number of people, of course, who would witness it, because that is how it would be reported to the other people, so that it remains no doubt about it. And how big it would be, or what would be the exact form, and where would be the place, that's, of course, we don't know. But Dabbatul Ard actually refers to the fact that some animal that would be directly born from the crust of the earth.
Thank you very much, Dr.
So
Saleem.
also, let me also explain this. If you look at those 10 signs which I mentioned, like earthquake in the east and earthquake on the west, and the setting of the rising of the sun from the west. So all these, are signs that are not very, something that we can really fully imagine or very precisely understand. So they are more of indications or insinuations, as we can say. So, in a similar way, we can think that Dabbatul Ard, or animal from the earth, is something that is going to happen one day before the day of judgment, and such will be this happening that we will immediately connect that we have studied this somewhere in Hadith literature, that there's going to be an animal born directly from earth. So it does seem that it will be so obvious that there will be no doubt about it.
So, like Dolly the sheep,
Mariam,
for
I
example,
will not
wouldn't
see
count.
that. No, Mariam, I will not see that. You probably will be able to see it. So be careful and be mindful.
Who
I
knows?
don't
Who
know.
knows?
In school, we learned that the dev is gonna go around and label people like believers, non-believers, and at that point, my brain just shut down because I was like, I
So
don't
you see,
believe.
those are all stories that we
Oh, so like the believer and the
are
disbeliever
that
thing is not
yeah.
okay. Okay, now then, but like Dolly the sheep wouldn't count as Dabbatil Ard.
No. So Dolly the sheep was a clone actually.
Yeah, so like, but it didn't have like technically a parent. It came from like the
So
adult
you see,
self.
it could not be a Dabbatul Ard. It's not something from the earth actually.
Okay, fair enough. We have a couple more off-topic questions, and then we'll come to the remaining raised hands. So this one asks, in the total, how many names of Allah exist in the Quran and not included in the Quran? Is that 99?
So I have done this exercise a lot of in my peers as well. So I mean, I don't find 99 names of the Quran if I total up those names in the Quran and which are mentioned out of the Quran, outside of the Quran in Hadith literature. So what has happened is that in order to make that total look true as 99, people have created more names of God like from verbs. I mean, their names not mentioned in anywhere, but from verbs and from actions. If you create a noun, then they also, I mean, counted as the name of God. But if to be realistic, I think there are just 28 or 29 names of God mentioned in the Quran. The Hadith literature mentions some others, and realistically, I mean, they don't total up to 99. Now, there is a hadith, of course, which knows that there are 99 names of God, and it's reported in Bukhari, I believe, also. But to be honest, I've racked my brains on this, and I don't find. I mean, I think there is something missing in this hadith. Probably the narrators have not mentioned the context, or there's something that has been left out, because I mean, they don't come to 99.
What about from other books like Torah or Injil?
We take from other books. We don't make them to be 99. I mean, they fall well below that number.
It was
Dr.
Muhammad Sallallahu name also that some names that Ghadi Sahib said some names are not even appropriate for him, that mention
I
99
mean,
names.
that I cannot say, but of course, there are some names which are not appropriate for God, and people have actually tried to sort of conjure them from verbs and just to make the total equal to 99. If you look at any, just Google 99 names of Allah, you'll get a big list, and you'll see that because they have said, I mean, they've cited where these names have appeared. They'll tell you which verse of the Quran or where in the Hadith, and then there will be verses in which the name would not be mentioned, but some action of God would be mentioned, and from that action, they would create His name.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, what is the Arsh?
That's a figurative thing. It's the throne of God. It refers to the fact that He is governing this universe. He's not aloof. He's not someone who's the first cause. He's not someone who has deputed its governance to angels or to other beings. So this is like clarifying, because you see the idolaters of Arabia, they regarded that maybe God is the first cause and now He's not interested in us, and in order to reach Him we have to first go through the angels or other intermediaries. So the Quran had to clarify at a number of places that He is someone who created summa stawa al arsh, and then He climbed His throne. This doesn't mean that He physically climbed His throne. It actually means that He sat and governed, or He's still governing this universe. It's not that He just created and then went to one side and left its affairs to other people or to other beings.
Thank
So
you.
Arsh is not something that you need to look physically. It's like a figurative way to tell that God is someone who's governing us as well, not just creating us, or not just created us, but also He has been governing us, and He's continued to govern us until the day of judgment.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Noshad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Just a small clarification. The time for tahajjud, I think I heard you saying during your recent lecture on Islam and charity that the time for tahajjud is exactly between the time of the sunset and the sunrise.
Yes, correct.
Is that correct, sir?
Exactly half of that.
Half of that. If, for example, the sun sets at 6 in the evening and rises at 6 next morning, then a minute past 12 is tahajjud time.
Correct. That is correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. About the sign of the air blowing people into the sea, is that like a big tornado type situation?
Something like that. It seems that there would be a huge storm, a huge typhoon or whatever. So that is something that's going to blow people away. And again, we are not very sure, is it all the people or a major chunk of the people? Would it be something like the deluge of Noah or something like that? So So that's still, I mean, remember, these signs are not, these are not very precise signs, so to speak. Once they arrive, you'll immediately think that, yes, this is what the hadith is saying. So their actual manifestation is something that's going to really define what they are about. So these are like approximate things that we can understand.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem.
Recently,
Rasul?
tornado, such a big tornado erupted in Ethiopia somewhere. That went
In Sri Lanka.
9 miles up into the sky, 9 miles up the sky. That's like big sign of something.
Right.
Rasul, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahab.
Right.
Dr. Sahab, I wanted to request you to maybe speak a little bit about the reality of the grave. Since my mother's passing, I have not been able to go to her grave, but only once. But when I did, like 10 days after her death, I felt like I was meeting her for the first time. Why do we get this feeling whereas we know that there is nobody there but only bones? But then there is also the Qabr ka azab wala concept, and then there is also the concept of the prayer that we make that Jannat ki khidki khul jaye Qabr ke andar, and then also there is this very famous prayer that when Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to pass by a graveyard, he used to say Assalamu alaikum ya Ahl al-Qabur. Whereas then there is this Alme Arwa as well, where every soul is supposed to go, or Barzakh. If you could just speak on that, and why do I feel like I'm going to say hello to my mother only when I go to the graveyard? Like, can't I just pray for her or speak to her wherever I am?
So you see, let me explain it in detail. As far as the Quran is concerned and authentic narratives are concerned, we know that once a person passes away, his soul departs and is deposited in the land of Barzakh. And about that land of Barzakh in Surah Anbiya, we are told that once the spirits or the souls go there, they cannot cross back. So the first important thing that we have to understand is that what is left of people is just their mortal remains, their organic remains, which are just going to decay one day. And the actual personality of a person, which is the soul, is no longer with that in that grave, so to speak. It's just taken away from there, and that soul, in fact, if you study authentic narratives, it tells us that just as the body has a grave, these souls will have a taboot or a grave, and every soul will be sleeping until the day of judgment in that land of Barzakh. Now, within that land of Barzakh, there would be certain category of people who, in fact, let me explain a little more. There will be just two categories of people. One category of people would be facing the wrath of God, and at the same time, the rewards of God also. So this is one category. And what is that category? People whose fate had been settled in their own lives when they were living. And of course, they were the adversaries of the messengers of God because of the fact that they had intentionally denied a messenger of God. So their accounts will be settled in their worldly life. And because their accounts have been settled in their worldly life, so it is but logical that in the remaining part of this Barzakh, they'll also be facing the same thing. They'll be given some sort of punishment to their souls, and they will feel that agony. So this is one category of people, and remember, this category of people is one that is alive in the day, in those miniature days of judgment, who face that miniature day of judgment. Now, people who live in the post-prophetic era, people like us, for us, we'll be just put to sleep. It will be a very long sleep, and excuse me. When we get up on the day of judgment, we would exclaim that we just slept, and we may have slept for millions of years. And so that is what will happen to people like us, because our accounts are not settled in this world. The accounts of the people who are living in the times of God's messengers, they are settled, and hence, as I said, they would be rewarded or punished in the land of Barzakh. But for us, because our accounts are yet to be settled, for us, the Quran says that the Meezan, or the scale would be set up on the day of judgment. Then our deeds would be actually weighed, and then people whose good deeds outweigh the bad deeds, they'll be given paradise, and vice versa. So this category of people are the people that live in the post-prophetic era, people like us. So like your mother or any other person who passes away today, he or she is just put to sleep and he or she will have no awareness of what's going on. I mean, one reason is that the land of barzakh, of course, is something that we don't have access to. And secondly, within the land of barzakh also, they'll not be roaming around or they'll not be talking to each other, they'll be just sleeping. So you have to rest assured that your mother is just being put to sleep, her soul is sleeping, and on the day of judgment, she will be called to, life once again, and her body will be given back to her, and then she'll face her reckoning. The second thing is that this fact that we go to the graveyard and we say Assalamu alaikum ya ahlul qubur. Again, remember, this is a figurative thing because the real thing is the next sentence that we often omit. The complete prayer is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inna insha ya ahlul qubur. Inna insha'Allahu bikum lahikun. So peace be to you, O dwellers of the graves. We are going to soon reach the same fate as you. So basically, it's like a reminder to all of us. We pray for people who have passed away. It doesn't mean that they're listening to us. It only means that we are expressing our own fate that soon we'll be meeting you as well. And we wish you peace, that God makes peace for you as well. So these prayers are nothing that they are meant to be heard by them. They are basically our own expression. I'm not sure if I've answered all your questions.
Dr. Saab, you have, and with great detail. I just have a very quick follow-up question or clarity that is required. So when somebody approaches you in this very difficult time and they say, "Oh, I am sure that your mother is looking down at you with a lot of pride and she's praying for you and she's very happy."
So I remember, this part of your question here. So this is just, this has no basis in the fact that people feel the presence of their mothers or their dear ones. A lot of people tell us that when I go into the room of my mother or my father or my brother or my son, I feel that I am with him or he is or she is with me, or I feel some fragrance. All this is psychological. You see, because of your intense attachment to the dear departed, you feel that presence. Some people feel it in the rooms, some people feel it near the grave, some people feel even the cars or the places that their departed might have lived. This is basically a manifestation of our intense psychological bond with that person. It has nothing to do with reality. Because remember, the person who has passed away, his soul or her soul is sleeping. Like a person who is not aware of his surroundings when he's sleeping or she's sleeping, in a very similar way. Not only that the person is sleeping in the next door, it's that he or she is in a different land, a different area. And that is how the souls are meant to be until the day of judgment. So we have no contact whatsoever with the spirits or the souls of the dead, and people think that, well, they come back and they make you feel their presence, or they even indicate some other things. No, that's not the case. And let me tell you, when these mediums, they talk about the fact that they are spirits and they are things like unknown beings, they're all something that's related to the jinn, the jinn kind. Because you see, the jinn, of course, they have presence, they have souls, and they have spirits, and all of them, they don't have physical appearance in some cases. So all contact which these mediums have, of course, are not with the dear departed or the dead. They are in fact with these living souls of the jinn. And of course, because they are present, so when they make themselves manifest at some places, then people realize, or they probably think that, well, there is some truth to the fact that spirits and souls, they come back. So it's not the spirits and the souls, it's basically these jinn that are there, and they are manipulated by these mediums.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the questions today. For more questions, please stay tuned for next Saturday, because that will be our Ask Dr. Saleem. So come with a lot of questions. Write them down throughout the week, whatever comes to your mind, and then keep them for next Saturday. And inshallah, we'll see you all again tomorrow in another session of textual study of the Quran. So until then, please take care, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.